You know that hellish website that's hard to look away from, kind of in the same way that it's hard to look away from the Titanic hitting an iceberg in slow motion. I believe it's called Twitter, named after its genius inventor Elon Musk, or at least he invented this anti-social media website just as much as he invented anything at Tesla and space fornication. That's the joke, right? SpaceX, space sex, funny. Anyway, invented in the sense that long after the inventing had already been done, he bought his way in just to take all the credit for all the work everyone else had already done and also continued to do at these companies. I suppose he did in fact found SpaceX, hence the juvenile pun, but he's not the one doing any of the work there. He just pretends he does. It's the image he projects. That's kind of his MO, to portray himself as a genius inventor who should be attributed with everything the workers below him do, even when in actuality he does very little. He spends his days replying to and signal boosting neo-Nazis and fascists on Twitter. He's on Twitter for hours every single day. Insofar as he even makes a difference at any of his companies, it's always for the worse, with dumb ideas like limiting the number of tweets you can see in a day, or tossing out the $44 billion brand he just bought to replace it with the letter X, because that's cool, or removing the block function from a social media site. Removing the block function from a social media site. From a social media site that has now become a haven for open neo-Nazism. Or really good ideas like a car with unloaded textures, because who doesn't want a car that rusts in the rain? Or reinventing mass transit, but without the mass transit part, and worse in every single way. Individual self-driving taxis to replace buses, trams, and trains.
The cost of autonomous transport will be so low that you can think of it like individualized mass transit.
Very high level and smart ideas. I'll tell you that much. So that's not even what this video essay is about. Elon Musk just sucks so hard it's easy to get lost in his shallow, soulless eyes and never stop being astounded by the dumb thoughts that hide behind them. No, that's not what this video essay is about, but his takeover of Twitter has emboldened the worst types of people who no longer get banned for being open neo-Nazis and saying vile things to and about women and minorities. The resulting culture that now exists on this social media website is one where the last remnants of shame that once existed on the internet, believe it or not, are completely gone, and reactionaries are fully comfortable saying really embarrassing stuff with their whole chest, like a post that I saw on X a while back. Okay, don't worry, we love this guy. Derek is great. I love reading his long takedowns of conservatives who dress poorly. Not because I care about clothes or even dress particularly well myself. I don't, and I know nothing about fashion. But what I do enjoy is a good master suppression technique used against the worst creeps on the planet. So I can't really comment much about what menswear guy Derek said in this long tweet thread, except that Trump doesn't dress as well as people think, I guess. But what I want to talk about is the guy he's quote tweeting, because oh boy. So let's just establish right off the bat that this guy, Will Tanner, is a fascist, alright? His entire timeline on Twitter is full of endless praise for the white ethno-state Rhodesia, longing for a white ethno-state and blaming society's problems on non-white people, a whole bunch of racism and calling black people thugs, fear-mongering over race communism, whatever that is, anger at FDR for helping the Soviets defeat the Nazis, and for doing welfare for poor people, because this guy, like all right-wingers, hates poor people and despises working people. longing for a mythologized glorious past, as a lot of fascists do, and the return of the British Empire, dreaming of dismantling democracy in favor of handing the power of the people over to the wealthy people he deems superior, because again, he hates poor people and working people. And of course, the tweet we're here to talk about, in which he is praising Trump in a way that's very interesting, and I'll explain why in a minute. Before I talk about that, let's also say that Donald Trump is a fascist too, for a number of reasons. He's talked about mass deportations, the likes of which we've never seen, basically ethnic cleansing. He, like many others on the right, participated in the fascist fervor and moral panic over Haitian migrants, essentially trying to instigate a pogrom. He's talked about an enemy within that needs to be destroyed by the military, an enemy into which he lumps all his political enemies, the radical left. Hey, that's me! In the context of migrants, he's talked about criminal genes. And he has flirted with the idea of basically the day of the rope, a day where the virtuous rise up and kill or purge the impure. Specifically, Trump said something to the effect of an hour of intense crackdown would be enough, that the word would spread, and that afterward, there would be no more crime. And remember, he thinks some people, brown migrants, have criminal genes. Trump has also parroted literal Nazi rhetoric, such as when he said that immigrants are, quote, poisoning the blood of the country, end quote. John Kelly also revealed that Hitler... Oh shit, I'm sorry. I genuinely wrote Hitler instead of Trump by accident in the script. No, Hitler did not praise Hitler. Well, I'm sure he did. But John Kelly revealed that Trump repeatedly praised Hitler, including such classics as Hitler did some good things. Trump also wanted generals like those Hitler had. You know, the Nazi generals who were loyal to the Nazi dictator, who oversaw the systemic mass murder of 6 million Jews and millions more, POWs, Soviet civilians, ethnic minorities, LGBTQ people, political enemies like socialists, communists, and trade unionists. Again, that's me. Neuroatypical people, disabled people, and the list goes on. And yes, Joanne, that list of victims includes trans people. So, I don't know how you can deny that Trump is a fascist. It is actually undeniable. You don't praise Hitler unless you're a fascist. And indeed, Trump also has a history of praising other fascists like Putin, Kim Jong-un, Erdogan, Orban, and again, the list goes on. You don't really do that unless you kind of a little bit also are a fascist. You don't respect the firm grip dictators have on power unless you also want to be a dictator, which Trump absolutely does. But this has kind of become a tangent, so let's go back to the topic of the video and read the tweet, because it kind of broke me just a little bit, which is why I had to make a video about it. Lovely, alright. I don't think we need to bother with the whole thread, the dumb AI memes, or why the guy thinks wearing a suit is superior somehow, but we can get the gist from the initial tweet. Quote, I think the Trump McDonald's visit hit home with so many is that... He means the reason. Quote, I think the reason Trump McDonald's... I don't like the way he wrote that. Quote, I think the reason Trump's McDonald's visit hit home with so many is that it was a glimmer of nobility of a time of hierarchy and noblesse oblige rather than the usual American politician thing of pretending to be a prole, as shown by what he wore, end quote. And then the tweet thread goes on to praise how Donald Trump is true to his regal self for wearing fancy clothes all the time instead of trying to look like us dirty pores. Because again, this guy hates poor people and thinks working people are worth less than rich people, like on a fundamental level. So what do you even say here? Where should I even begin? Glimmer of nobility of a time of hierarchy and noblesse oblige? longing for that glorious past when the upper echelons of society had social and cultural power weaved into the very fabrics of society and its laws, more so, when the proles knew their place at the boot and cherished the noblesse oblige of nobility. Let's not even go back to the 50s. Let's go back to feudalism. I want to be a serf. I want to serve my God-chosen superior, my lord, my king, as long as they oblige me with their regal presence once in a blue moon. I want to see how well off they are from all the hard work I do all year round. I want to farm potatoes and corn for some fat cat lord in a faraway castle. That's what I want. Here's the thing, okay? Fascism is cringe. It's weird. Sure, it's scary. It's dangerous, deleterious, a genuine threat to human life, culture, and civilization, as we're about to witness over the coming 4 years. But it's also very cringe, weird, and kind of pathetic. And I think this tweet perfectly illustrates that, and also the fascist obsession with hierarchy, because hierarchy is an interesting concept to talk about, especially its relationship to fascism. On paper, fascism values strength and looks down on weakness, but that's kind of how the fascist wants to be viewed. It isn't really the full picture, is it? So, with regards to hierarchy, we should talk about two different things. One, the essentialist group-based hierarchy of fascist ideology, and two, the interpersonal hierarchy that forms between fascists. Let's start with the essentialist group-based hierarchy. The fascist, apparently we're talking about fascists as if they're the subject of a nature documentary. The fascist believes in collective group-based hierarchies along several different axes, perhaps most notably racial or ethnic lines. In fact, the fascist is obsessed with this kind of hierarchy, the idea that some groups of people are better than others just because they are. Now, a lot of fascist narrativization is fundamentally about a perceived threat to this natural order. For example, it is not uncommon to see fascists lament how the white man is being racially cucked by the black man, and that the white man must rise up to reassert his natural dominance. It's very much that fascist myth of an enemy that is both strong and weak at the same time. Black men are lesser than white men, but black men are getting all the women because of feminism and degeneracy and, them. Right. If you engage even passingly with any kind of political content, that type of fascist narrativization about the supposed collective cuckoldry of the white man is probably something you've seen at some point. Hell, there's even memes about it, really funny memes too. Fascism requires struggle and conflict, even if it is imaginary. Hell, it's always imaginary. Without that conflict or perceived conflict, fascism falters because it's a really dumb ideology, genuinely. But to get to the point, the fascist believes that white men are naturally superior and should be at the top of the hierarchy, and that strong men are needed to maintain this natural order. That's how they like to view themselves, as strong men doing what's necessary to protect, preserve, or reconstruct the natural order of the world. But then there's this tweet, right? This tweet where the guy openly expresses his desire for a social superior, longing to be underneath the boot, and the myth of the strong fascist kind of crumbles because it was never true. This brings us to interpersonal hierarchy. The fascist absolutely believes that some people are better than others, even within groups. Like this guy who hates the white working class almost as much, but not quite, as he hates black people. But the force of fascist ideology tends to be focused on racial conflict or conflict between groups. However, fascists are actually quite submissive. And there is a reason for that, namely that they tend to be deeply, deeply insecure and fragile. That's not just true for random schmuck fascist, it's also true for fascist leaders. For example, let's take any random right-wing public figure and see if we can figure out what their insecurities are. I don't know, let's say Tim Pool, the guy who always wears a beanie. I wonder what his insecurities are, the guy who always wears a beanie. Oh yeah, for the longest time he was an unmarried, childless loser who was pushing 40 and crying himself to sleep at night because he was so desperately lonely. That and the baldness. Okay, from what I've heard, he does have a girlfriend now, and she is pregnant. She just so happens to be an employee of his, make of that what you will. If they're happy, I'm happy they're happy. Not really, because he is the scum of the earth, and I want him to be miserable. Remember that time he, like many other conservatives, celebrated murder? No, not that time. The other time. Yes, that time. There's been more than one. But it's good for him that he finally found someone after years of crying about how he's single because all women are bad. It's not me, it's everyone else, as he said.
See that I'm about to be 34 and I have no family. You know what the problem is though? It's definitely not me. I think it's everybody else.
Honestly, it's kind of surprising how long it took him. Think about how socially inept and insecure you must be to rake in $5 million a year for making one shitty YouTube video every week. Nothing suspicious there, and still struggling to find a single woman willing to marry you and bear your offspring? And I don't think it's even all that important in itself to have sex, get married, or have children, but he does, and he's deeply insecure about it. That and the fact that he's very much bald, unlike me. Honestly, even as an expecting father, I doubt any of his insecurities have gone away. You don't live with insecurities for decades and then cure them just like that. That's really not how the human psyche works. Insecurities are not rational. They tend to be deeply ingrained, emotional, and persist well after you'd think they should be resolved. Tim Pool was for the longest time insecure with regards to women, kind of an incel, and it explains a lot about his radicalization to the right, whether he realizes it or not. And I bet that insecurity is still ingrained deep in the roots that make up his person. But who cares about Tim Pool? Let's instead talk about Donald Trump, president-elect, and another guy who is very much insecure. You can mask a lot of insecurity through bravado, and I guess faking it till you make it. But Trump doesn't lie about the sizes of his crowds or how everything is the biggest or the best for no reason. He lies because he's a narcissist who needs to be the biggest and the best. But my guess is he knows he's not. We actually do have black on white proof that he knows he's lying. Text messages and recordings of his saying one thing and then rallies where he says the opposite to his supporters. Like he knows he lost the 2020 election, but he has to lie in public, because losing would be too much for his ego to bear, because he's insecure. I've worked with children who behave very similarly, who try to lie and cheat at board games even though they know they've lost. You'd think there's very little satisfaction in that, but if you take pleasure in dominating others rather than feeling accomplished for having achieved a victory, I suppose lying will do. If all you care about is pride, ego, and saving face, lying will do. And we all know that children can be little pricks sometimes, God bless them, but it's weird to see this behavior in an adult so plainly and obviously. I think it speaks to stunted social development or insecurity, or more likely both. And he used to be the most powerful man in the world. And he won the 2024 election and will become the most powerful man in the world again. So that's neat. I really appreciate how the inept Democratic Party handed him another term by moving to the right on immigration in order to court conservatives they were never going to get anyway, instead of offering a strong left-wing counter-narrative and vision. Like, you're never going to win over right-wing voters by being slightly less right-wing than the opposition, because they'll just vote for the more right-wing party. Duh! You win by offering a strong narrative and vision for how to make life better. You need to offer something substantive rather than trying to focus test your way to the right sequence of words that will appeal to the mythological median voter. Whatever. Fascists are insecure, fascists are fragile, they have fragile egos. Really, fascists feel small and powerless. A lot of us do sometimes, of course, that's normal, like socialists also feel small and powerless against the capitalist machine. Women probably feel pretty powerless right now, when a rapist wins an election, and a bunch of men start harassing them with the words, "your body, my choice," in reference to the very likely revocation of abortion rights, their fundamental human rights, or as a thinly veiled rape threat. Or any person can feel small and powerless, really, when they try to return a broken product to Microsoft, a faceless corporation that sends it back and says it was your fault that it's broken, even though it wasn't, because this was the 11th damn time that the goddamn thing got the goddamn red ring of death, and I just want to be able to buy that sweet juicy horse armor, please and thank you, goddamn! But it's different for the fascists. Because the fascist seeks a sense of power through the proxy of the strongman. The fascist fawns over the strongman because the strongman symbolizes power. He's a symbol of their power as the cuckolded white man. The fascist feels powerless in a world of perceived chaos, changing social norms, the freedom to be degenerate, women breaking free from their historic shackles, and the struggle to find a mate when one isn't provided for you. The strongman provides order by eradicating degeneracy and enacting strict social norms and hierarchies that must be adhered to. The fascist being ideologically submissive in order to alleviate their insecurities and related anxieties falls below the strongman in the hierarchy. But that's okay, because at least they'll be above all the degenerates in the mass graves. That's the main topic of this video, but I did want to bring up one other thing, which is the idea that other politicians cosplay as proles, as working people, but Trump supposedly doesn't because he wore a suit when he pretended to work at McDonald's? Isn't pretending to work at McDonald's for an hour when you're a billionaire who's only doing it for the publicity kind of the definition of cosplaying as a prole? Look, he's just like us workers because he pretended to work at McDonald's in front of the press for an hour. Just remember that he's actually better than us, though. Capitalist royalty, really, because he wore a suit. Get real, loser. These replies, man, these replies. Quote, blue-collar billionaire. End quote. Quote, we deserve better elites. End quote. We deserve better elites? There shouldn't be any fucking elites. Oh no, the hierarchy is bad. Not because hierarchy is bad, but because the wrong people have power. The degenerates have power. Get ready for this one, though. Quote, this is the secular American equivalent of the Pope washing the feet of the poor, end quote. This is the secular American equivalent of the Pope washing the feet of the poor. This is the secular American equivalent of the Pope washing the feet of the poor. These people, man, these people, genuinely embarrassing or impressive, depending on how you look at it, how far down they can get that boot, truly reaching for new lows of fascist bootlicking. Anyway, I think that's probably all we can squeeze out of this weird cringe tweet. Subscribe to my Noblesse channel to enjoy more of my glimmer of nobility. I am fully dedicated to the struggle to tear down the capitalist machine and bring back feudalism. Heck yeah! Yeah. Hey there, thanks for watching. I really do appreciate it. I know it's been a while, like 4 months since my last video. I've been dealing with some stuff IRL, so to speak. My girlfriend and I moved to a bigger apartment, and I've set up this office studio in the spare room. So this is the first episode being recorded here. So that's exciting. We adopted a pair of cats as well, so that's definitely been an adventure. Autumn is also full of birthdays and family gatherings, like so many that it's a little bit of a struggle for an introvert like myself, but I'm powering through it. That's kept me quite busy. Work's also been pretty rough lately, draining a lot of energy, and my grandpa died. So that sucks. It's kind of weird saying it out loud, to be honest. It was a little while ago, like a couple of months ago. But, it's always weird to say it out loud, like it makes it so real. He was 97, though. He lived a full life, truly. More life than most people get, so it's sad but not tragic, and I suppose that's all you can hope for in this life, really. Things should be getting back on track channel-wise, I hope. I have some killer videos in the pipeline, so subscribe and stick around. You will not regret it. Thanks.